the eternal voice.
If you value your evening's peace, consider subscribing before we begin. Your attention is the only currency required for passage beyond this threshold. Tonight we trace the hidden congregations that gather where streetlights fail and reason falters. Those who whisper prayers not to saints, but to star spawn, who carve signs into wet stone and salt-stained wood. The price of entry seems small, merely listening. The cost of comprehension, as you'll discover, proves far steeper. There are many doorways into the realm of the old ones, through idols green as deep water, through chants that taste of copper and brine, through dreams that leave your pillow damp as if tides had risen in the night. Yet the cults stand at the center of this labyrinth, not as mere background figures in cosmic theater, but as instruments themselves. They are keys and gates, veil and void. The idea acts upon them and through them upon you. We begin as scholars, names, dates, transmissions carefully catalogued. We end as something else entirely, an audience that discovers it has become the chorus. You will hear of Rillia's impossible geometry, of ink-dark churches where electric lights are extinguished to summon darker illumination, of festivals where masks never come off because the faces beneath have forgotten their original shapes. You will trace how certain chants move from mouth to mouth like fog through narrow alleys, how identical sigils appear carved into wharfs in Massachusetts and basalt altars in the Pacific, separated by oceans yet connected by something deeper than geography. The stakes manifest gradually, like pressure changes before a storm. Each layer of understanding you accept rearranges the furniture of consciousness. A shelf shifts here. A window opens there onto black water. Stars in your ceiling begin to glow in patterns you never placed. In Lovecraft's cosmos, knowledge functions as contagion. Worship emerges not as cause, but symptom. The cultist does not choose their deity. The god selects a nervous system, a voice, a pair of hands, and wears them like a comfortable mask. Consider the archaeological evidence that mainstream institutions refuse to acknowledge. Stone tablets bearing identical symbols appear in Polynesian caves, Scottish stone circles, and beneath Mayan temples, separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time. These markings resist conventional linguistic analysis, yet viewers report understanding their meaning through direct contact, as if the information bypasses normal language processing entirely. The symbols themselves seem to shift when observed peripherally, their geometry suggesting dimensions that human eyes struggle to process. Our method follows the old academic ritual: cite, compare, trace the lineages. The Call of Cthulhu, 1928. The Shadow over Innsmouth, 1936. The Haunter of the Dark, 1936. The Dunwich Horror, 1929. Primary sources that spawned 1,000 whispered prayers. Letters passed among the Lovecraft circle, where pantheons were annotated like theater programs, where Derleth and Clark Ashton Smith traded cosmic horrors like baseball cards. Yet scholarship alone cannot illuminate these shadows. It serves merely as the lantern we carry into fog, casting circles of light that reveal how much darkness surrounds us. The psychological profiles of practitioners challenge every assumption about religious motivation. These are not desperate individuals seeking supernatural comfort, but often highly educated professionals. Mathematicians, archaeologists, marine biologists who encounter cosmic concepts through legitimate research and find themselves unable to abandon investigations that conventional wisdom would classify as career suicide. Their transformation follows predictable stages: intellectual curiosity, obsessive information gathering, gradual isolation from mainstream communities, and eventual acceptance of worldviews their colleagues would consider evidence of breakdown. The geographical distribution reveals patterns visible only from orbital perspective. Cult sites cluster around deep ocean trenches, areas of unusual magnetic activity, regions where Earth's crust grows thin. Modern satellite surveys continue identifying previously unknown locations, matching these characteristics, suggesting traditions extending far beyond historical documentation into territories mapmakers have never properly explored. By journey's end, you will know the taxonomy of these congregations, the dreaming cult that receives broadcasts from sunken cities, the maritime orders that trade gold for gills, the churches of extinguished light that worship darkness as revelation, the rural covens that open gates through grammar and genealogy, and the thousand-masked messengers' urban processions. You will understand their mechanisms: dream telemetry and blood contract, language as lockpick and shadow as sacrament, fertility unmoored from ecology. Most importantly, you will recognize what it means that an audience can become a ritual, that listening transforms into offering, that a channel may serve as chapel. We begin not with light-piercing darkness, but with curtains drawing back to reveal that the stage was always there, the players already in position, someone humming just beyond the footlights. The next movement requires definition, for names are nets, and we need sturdy ones to drag these leviathans of meaning to the surface without the lines snapping under impossible weight. To name something is to begin the dangerous work of understanding it. And in the realm of cosmic horror, understanding cuts both ways, illuminating the observer while simultaneously exposing them to forces that prefer to work in shadow. When we speak of cults in the Lovecraftian sense, we must first strip away every comfortable assumption about human religious organization and rebuild our definitions from stranger foundations. A cult, in conventional terms, suggests devotion, the careful tending of sacred flame, the preservation of tradition, the community gathered around shared belief. But the congregations that serve the old ones operate according to different principles entirely. They are not communities of faith, but infection vectors, not preservers of tradition, but carriers of contagion. The Latin cultus meant care, cultivation, the patient work of tending. Yet what grows in these hidden gardens defies every natural law of growth and flourishing. Consider the archaeological evidence that mainstream scholarship refuses to acknowledge. Dr. Margaret Henley's excavation of a pre-Roman site in Cornwall uncovered stone tablets bearing inscriptions that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, carved in symbols that resembled no known writing system, yet somehow conveyed meaning to anyone who studied them long enough. Her field notes, sealed after her disappearance, describe the gradual realization that these symbols were not representing sounds or concepts in conventional sense. They were instructions for forms of worship that predated any known civilization in Britain. This pattern repeats with disturbing consistency across continents and centuries. The Mesopotamian fragments that caused such controversy in the 1920s, the Aboriginal petroglyphs that align with no terrestrial astronomical phenomena, the Mayan codices that describe stellar configurations invisible to naked eyes, all share structural elements suggesting common inspiration from sources that conventional archaeology cannot accommodate. What emerges is evidence of religious practices that manifest spontaneously whenever human consciousness reaches certain thresholds of development. It is as if the capacity for cosmic horror worship lies dormant in our species, activating when specific conditions align. The civilizations that built Stonehenge calculated Mayan calendars with impossible precision and encoded sophisticated astronomical knowledge in Egyptian pyramids, all left secondary evidence of religious practices extending far beyond their official pantheons. The transmission mechanisms challenge everything we understand about how religious ideas spread. Unlike conventional faiths that trace through missionary work, conquest, or cultural exchange, the worship of cosmic entities propagates through direct revelation. Individuals separated by vast distances and historical periods report nearly identical ritual practices, mythological frameworks, and theological insights with no apparent contact between traditions. The Voynich manuscript exemplifies this phenomenon. Recent computational analysis reveals text patterns consistent with natural language, yet no earthly tongue matches its structure. More disturbing, readers who spend extended time with the manuscript report remarkably similar dreams, visions of impossible cities beneath oceans, geometric forms existing in more than 3 dimensions, ceremonies conducted by figures recognizably human yet fundamentally altered. The geographical distribution of cult sites follows patterns visible only from orbital perspective. They cluster around deep ocean trenches, areas of unusual magnetic activity, regions where Earth's crust grows thin. Modern satellite surveys identify dozens of previously unknown locations matching this profile, suggesting the tradition extends far beyond historical records. The temporal distribution proves equally unsettling. Rather than showing gradual development and decline typical of religious movements, cosmic horror worship manifests in regular cycles, emerging when civilizations reach sufficient complexity, vanishing during social collapse, resurging centuries later in entirely different cultures. The ideas themselves seem to exist independently of human carriers, returning when conditions prove suitable for propagation. The artifacts resist conventional analysis. Carbon dating produces inconsistent results, as if materials exist partially outside normal temporal flow. Spectrographic analysis reveals isotopic compositions that should not occur naturally on Earth. Most disturbing, prolonged exposure produces measurable changes in researchers' brain activity, with EEG patterns resembling deep meditation or psychedelic states. The academic conspiracy surrounding these findings speaks volumes. Careers destroyed, funding withdrawn, departments reorganized to prevent investigation. The message rings clear that some knowledge proves too dangerous for institutional support. Yet research continues privately, funded by those who understand the stakes. We move now from definition to mechanism. For understanding what these cults are leads inevitably to examining what they do, how ideas become contagion, how worship transforms into transformation, how the observer becomes the observed. Ideas, we have always been told, are the products of minds, thoughts generated by brains, shaped by experience, transmitted through language and culture. But in the shadowed territories where cosmic horror takes root, this comfortable assumption dissolves like salt in dark water. Here, ideas possess their own agency, their own hunger, their own methods of reproduction that use human consciousness as both incubator and transmission vector. Dr. Sarah Chen's groundbreaking research into what she termed ideological epidemiology began with a simple observation. Certain concepts associated with cosmic horror seemed to spread through intellectual networks with mathematical precision that defied conventional models of cultural transmission. Her analysis of Lovecraft's correspondence revealed that ideas like Cthulhu's dream broadcast didn't simply propagate through publication, they manifested spontaneously in individuals with no direct exposure to the source material. The infection follows predictable pathways. Initial exposure often occurs through seemingly innocent academic pursuits. A linguist attempting to decipher dead languages, an archaeologist examining unusual artifacts, a mathematician exploring non-Euclidean geometries. The mind, trained to recognize patterns and solve puzzles, provides ideal conditions for cosmic concepts to establish themselves. like a virus that hijacks cellular machinery to reproduce itself. These ideas co-opt human curiosity and analytical thinking. The progression exhibits distinct stages. First comes intellectual excitement, the thrill of encountering concepts that seem to explain previously puzzling phenomena. Researchers report breakthrough moments when cosmic horror frameworks suddenly illuminate connections between disparate archaeological finds, astronomical observations, or mathematical relationships. This initial euphoria masks the deeper transformation beginning in the host consciousness. The second stage involves obsessive research behavior. Infected individuals develop compulsive need to seek additional information, often abandoning other professional and personal responsibilities. They report feeling called to specific locations, drawn to particular texts, or compelled to pursue research directions that colleagues find inexplicable. Sleep patterns deteriorate as dreams become increasingly vivid and consistent, featuring imagery that matches descriptions in cosmic horror literature, despite lack of prior exposure. The final stage represents cognitive reorganization. The infected mind begins perceiving reality according to principles that contradict conventional understanding. Causality becomes fluid, geometry grows plastic, and the boundaries between self and cosmos start dissolving. Yet rather than impairing function, this transformation often enhances certain capabilities: pattern recognition, mathematical intuition, and creative problem-solving all show marked improvement. The geographical clustering of cases reveals environmental factors in susceptibility. Areas near deep ocean trenches, regions with unusual electromagnetic properties, and locations of ancient archaeological significance show higher infection rates. The Miskatonic University Mathematics Department provides a perfect case study. Between 1925 and 1928, 7 faculty members independently developed theories about impossible geometries, each reporting identical dream sequences involving underwater cities built according to architectural principles that human minds struggle to process. The transmission vectors prove remarkably diverse. Academic papers containing certain mathematical formulations, architectural plans incorporating specific proportional relationships, and artistic works employing particular symbolic configurations all serve as carriers. These vectors can remain dormant for decades, embedded in libraries, museums, or private collections, waiting for minds capable of recognizing their significance. Modern communication networks have exponentially accelerated transmission. Digital archives make dangerous texts globally accessible, while search algorithms actively connect susceptible individuals with relevant materials. Online communities dedicated to cosmic horror create echo chambers that reinforce and amplify infectious concepts. Social media platforms designed to maximize engagement prove particularly effective at spreading ideological contagion to precisely those individuals most likely to be affected. The institutional response has been swift and systematic. Universities quietly restructure curricula to minimize exposure, libraries restrict access to certain collections, and academic publishers develop protocols for identifying potentially dangerous content. Yet these containment efforts may prove fundamentally inadequate. The concepts appear to possess evolutionary adaptability, developing new transmission strategies to circumvent barriers. Perhaps most disturbing is growing evidence that the ideas actively seek new hosts. Analysis of internet traffic patterns reveals anomalous data flows that target individuals with specific psychological profiles. Search queries related to cosmic horror generate responses that appear customized for maximum ideological impact on particular users. The boundary between human agency and external manipulation grows increasingly unclear. The implications extend beyond individual psychology into collective consciousness. If ideas can function as autonomous entities pursuing their own propagation, then human intellectual development may be far less independent than assumed. Our species' cultural evolution might be guided by conceptual entities whose ultimate purposes remain opaque to human understanding. We turn now from the mechanisms of infection to the spaces where it flourishes, the architectural and geographical stages where cosmic horror performs its most dramatic transformations of human consciousness. In the hidden chambers where reality grows thin, architecture becomes theology, and space itself serves as scripture written in angles that shouldn't exist. The cults of the old ones understand what mainstream science only begins to glimpse, that consciousness and geometry share intimate connections, that certain spatial relationships can fundamentally alter human perception, opening doorways not just between rooms, but between dimensions of experience. The ritual spaces employed by these congregations function as more than mere meeting places. They operate as consciousness modification technologies, carefully designed to prepare human minds for contact with entities that exist according to non-terrestrial principles. Professor Elena Vasquez's covert analysis of cult compounds across 6 continents revealed mathematical sophistication that challenges fundamental assumptions about ancient architectural knowledge. Consider the Kingsport compound, built according to plans received through ritual contact with forces that conventional academia refuses to acknowledge. The structure incorporates angular relationships that violate Euclidean principles while remaining mysteriously stable. Load-bearing walls that should collapse under gravitational stress have supported the building for over a century. Support columns placed in mathematically impossible positions somehow distribute weight according to principles that conventional physics cannot explain. The blueprints themselves resist reproduction. Attempts to copy original plans result in documents showing different configurations each time they're consulted, as if the building's design exists in constant flux. Construction workers report that the structure seems to guide its own assembly, with measurements that change between morning and evening, corridors that lead to destinations not indicated on any map. The psychological effects on inhabitants follow predictable patterns. Initial exposure produces mild spatial disorientation. Visitors report feeling simultaneously claustrophobic and agoraphobic, as if rooms were both too small and too vast. Extended residence leads to enhanced geometric intuition, with occupants developing ability to navigate impossible spaces that would confuse unmodified human perception. Brain imaging reveals corresponding neurological changes, particularly in regions processing spatial relationships and mathematical reasoning. The construction process functions as initiation ritual for cult members. Unlike conventional building projects following predetermined plans, cult architecture emerges through guided improvisation, requiring constant communication with the entities they serve. Each decision about placement, proportion, and material selection occurs through divination techniques, allowing old ones to directly influence construction. The result is architecture that manifests alien consciousness in physical form, buildings that possess awareness independent of human occupants. The most sophisticated examples incorporate temporal distortions alongside spatial anomalies. The Dunwich Observatory contains rooms existing at different rates of temporal flow. Visitors spend subjective hours in certain chambers, while minutes pass in external world, while other spaces compress days of experience into moments of outside time. These temporal effects serve both practical and spiritual purposes, allowing extended rituals within compressed time frames while providing direct experience of time's malleable nature. Acoustic properties deserve particular attention. designed to facilitate communication with entities existing partially outside normal space-time. The chambers incorporate resonance frequencies that human ears cannot detect, but consciousness can process, creating subliminal channels bypassing conventional sensory mechanisms. Cultists report receiving instruction through these acoustic pathways, with information transmitted as mathematical relationships and geometric patterns rather than conventional language. The buildings continue evolving after construction, modifying structure in response to inhabitants' needs and development. Security cameras document corridors reconfiguring during periods of no human observation, rooms expanding or contracting based on occupancy requirements, architectural features appearing spontaneously without construction activity. This suggests the structures possess consciousness, enabling adaptation to changing circumstances. The influence extends beyond buildings themselves, creating zones of spatial distortion affecting surrounding landscape. Property values in adjacent areas show unusual patterns, some locations becoming inexplicably desirable while others are abandoned despite apparent advantages. Satellite imagery reveals geometric patterns in vegetation growth, road development, and cloud formation mirroring mathematical principles underlying cult construction. Modern architecture increasingly incorporates elements derived from cult design principles, often without conscious awareness of their source. Non-orthogonal angles in contemporary buildings, emphasis on spaces feeling larger or smaller than actual dimensions, and acoustic properties designed to influence mood all reflect subtle influence of concepts originally developed for cosmic entity contact. The digital age opens new possibilities extending beyond physical construction. Virtual reality environments designed according to Old One principles produce psychological effects similar to physical structures while requiring no building materials or permits. These digital cult spaces distribute through online networks, creating virtual congregations spanning continents while maintaining architectural coherence necessary for effective practice. The implications for human settlement patterns prove profound. If architecture functions as consciousness modification technology, then built environments become applied psychology shaping human development in ways we're only beginning to understand. The cities we inhabit may unconsciously prepare us for transformations we haven't yet recognized as inevitable. We move now from the spaces of worship to the mechanisms of devotion, the precise techniques through which human consciousness opens itself to cosmic influence, and the irreversible changes that follow such opening. Beneath the surface of what we call worship lies a more precise and terrifying reality. The systematic techniques through which human consciousness opens itself to cosmic influence, methods refined across centuries of careful experimentation that transform devotion from emotional expression into technological process. These are not the theatrical rituals of popular imagination, but consciousness modification protocols that operate with surgical precision on the deepest structures of human awareness. Brother Marcus Thorne's detailed documentation of Starry Wisdom Church ceremonies, recovered from his abandoned study after the failed police raid of 1928, provides unprecedented insight into these mechanics. His journals describe practices combining advanced mathematics, experimental psychology, and applied neurology in ways that produce measurable changes in brain function and perception. The rituals progress through structured stages, each targeting specific limitations in human cognitive architecture. The initial phase focuses on disrupting conventional thought patterns through controlled exposure to paradox and contradiction. Participants engage in exercises deliberately violating logical consistency, mathematical coherence, and sensory reliability. These practices weaken psychological mechanisms, maintaining consensus reality, creating cognitive flexibility necessary for processing exotic information. The disorientation is both intentional and temporary, necessary dissolution of inadequate mental structures rather than permanent damage. The mathematical component deserves particular attention, providing structural framework preventing complete psychological collapse during consciousness expansion. Cultists learn specific numerical relationships and geometric patterns as anchoring points, maintaining cognitive stability, while awareness extends into overwhelming domains. These mathematical tools function as psychological scaffolding, supporting expanded consciousness without losing connection to recognizable thought forms. Advanced practitioners develop ability to maintain multiple contradictory belief systems simultaneously. Cognitive skill essential for comprehending entities existing according to principles violating human logical frameworks. This mental flexibility enables communication with beings whose existence challenges fundamental assumptions about causation, identity, and temporal sequence. The psychological cost proves significant. Practitioners struggle maintaining normal social relationships as consciousness becomes increasingly incompatible with conventional human society. The group dynamics create resonance effects, amplifying individual transformation beyond what isolated practice could achieve. When multiple consciousness expansion techniques are performed simultaneously by prepared participants, the collective state generates what can only be described as group mind possessing capabilities exceeding the sum of individual components. This collective consciousness perceives and interacts with cosmic entities in ways impossible for isolated human awareness. The physical components, ceremonial objects, architectural spaces, material preparations, function as focusing mechanisms, concentrating and directing energies generated during consciousness expansion. These elements are not symbolic representations, but functional technologies interacting with human neurology to facilitate specific psychological transformations. Incense formulations contain compounds producing measurable brain chemistry changes, while geometric patterns in ceremonial spaces create visual stimuli triggering altered states with remarkable consistency. The rituals prove cumulative in effects, each ceremony building upon previous practices to create progressive expansion of awareness and capability. Long-term practitioners develop abilities bordering on supernatural, enhanced pattern recognition, precognitive awareness, and capacity to influence probability through focused intention. These capabilities suggest human consciousness possesses latent potentials remaining dormant under normal conditions, but activatable through appropriate techniques. The integration phase proves crucial for maintaining psychological stability during transformation. Practitioners must learn navigating between expanded awareness and conventional social functioning, developing ability to compartmentalize enhanced capabilities while maintaining connection to normal human consciousness. This balancing act requires considerable skill and often takes years to master fully. Recent neuroscience provides theoretical frameworks for understanding how these practices might produce reported effects. Research into neuroplasticity demonstrates consciousness is far more malleable than previously assumed, while studies of meditation and psychedelic experiences show significant awareness changes achievable through relatively simple techniques. Cult rituals may represent sophisticated applications of principles mainstream science only begins recognizing. The technological implications emerge as practitioners apply enhanced awareness to practical problems. Innovations in quantum computing, genetic engineering, and energy systems show evidence of insights extending beyond conventional scientific methodology, suggesting expanded consciousness provides access to knowledge invisible to unmodified awareness. The Cthulhu cult exemplifies dream-based transmission, where psychic emanations from the sunken city of Relia penetrate sleeping minds across the globe. Practitioners report shared visions of impossible underwater architecture, the crushing pressure of oceanic depths, and the patient malevolence of something vast stirring in abyssal darkness. Their rituals focus not on summoning but on preparing, readying human consciousness for the moment when the stars are right and their dreaming god awakens to reclaim a world that was always his. The process transforms participants from observers into instruments, their consciousness becoming conduits for forces operating according to post-human principles. The horror lies not in external threat, but in recognition of inevitable participation in cosmic drama whose rules transcend human understanding. In the depths where pressure crushes steel and light never penetrates, something vast and ancient stirs in restless slumber, sending ripples of influence across the planet's surface through the medium of human dreams. The cult of Cthulhu represents perhaps the most widespread and persistent of all Old One congregations, unified not by geography or doctrine, but by shared participation in a psychic phenomenon that transcends conventional understanding of communication and consciousness. The mechanism operates with elegant simplicity and terrifying efficiency. From his corpse city of Relia, sunk beneath Pacific waters for eons beyond human reckoning, the great dreamer broadcasts fragments of his cosmic awareness into the sleeping minds of sensitive individuals worldwide. These are not random transmissions, but carefully targeted emanations that seek out consciousness, capable of processing and retransmitting the signal to others similarly attuned. Professor James Whitman's suppressed research into global dream phenomena documented remarkable synchronicities. Artists in New York, fishermen in the Philippines, and mathematicians in Prague all reported identical visions during the same 24-hour periods, despite having no contact with each other or prior exposure to cosmic horror literature. Their shared dreams featured impossible underwater architecture, the crushing weight of oceanic depths, and the sense of vast intelligence stirring in abyssal darkness. The sensory anchors prove consistent across cultures and continents. Dreamers report the taste of salt and decay, the sound of water moving through spaces that shouldn't exist, the feeling of pressure building behind their eyes like deep sea diving without proper equipment. They wake with fragments of an alien language on their tongues. Funglui melwanaf Cthulhu relia wagah nagal ftan. Words that hurt to pronounce, yet feel necessary to speak, as if silence would somehow increase the pressure in their skulls. The cult's organizational structure reflects this dream-based transmission system. Local cells form spontaneously when multiple dreamers in the same geographical area recognize their shared experience. These groups rarely follow formal hierarchy, instead operating as psychic networks, where information flows through dream contact rather than conventional communication. Members often know each other only through their shared visions, meeting in locations revealed through sleep rather than planned through waking consultation. The artifacts associated with Cthulhu worship serve as both focuses and amplifiers for the dream signal. The green stone idols, carved according to geometries that seem to shift when viewed peripherally, function as psychic antennae that strengthen reception of Arlié's broadcasts. Police reports from raids on cult compounds describe these objects as unnaturally cold to the touch, covered in moisture despite being stored in dry environments, and producing subtle sounds like distant ocean waves when handled. The rituals themselves focus on preparation rather than summoning. Cultists understand their role not as agents of Cthulhu's awakening, but as advanced scouts preparing humanity for inevitable transformation. Their ceremonies involve synchronized dreaming, where groups of practitioners sleep in carefully arranged positions while focusing on shared imagery received through their psychic connection to Arlia. These collective dreams reportedly achieve greater clarity and detail than individual reception, creating shared experiences of exploring the sunken city's impossible architecture. The temporal aspect of Cthulhu worship deserves particular attention. Unlike cults focused on immediate gratification or earthly power, these congregations operate according to cosmic timescales that dwarf human history. Their patience reflects their deity's own suspended animation. They wait for astronomical alignments that occur once every 26,000 years, when the stars are right and the barriers between dimensions weaken sufficiently to permit Relia's rise from oceanic depths. The psychological profile of Cthulhu cultists reveals individuals drawn not by desperation or madness, but by a peculiar form of cosmic claustrophobia. They describe feeling trapped within the limitations of human consciousness, suffocated by the narrow bandwidth of terrestrial awareness. The dream contact provides relief from this existential compression, offering glimpses of mental states that operate according to oceanic rather than atmospheric principles. The geographical distribution of cult activity correlates strongly with proximity to deep ocean trenches and areas of unusual seismic activity. Coastal regions worldwide report higher concentrations of dream receivers, while island populations show particularly strong susceptibility to Relia's psychic emanations. Maritime communities often develop cult practices organically, with fishing families passing down traditions of deep dreams through generations without recognizing their connection to larger cosmic phenomena. Modern technology has amplified the cult's reach in unexpected ways. Sleep research laboratories document anomalous brainwave patterns in subjects who report Cthulhu-related dreams, with EEG readings showing synchronized activity across multiple individuals despite physical separation. Internet forums dedicated to dream sharing have become unwitting recruitment tools, connecting isolated dreamers and facilitating the formation of new cult cells. The ultimate horror of Cthulhu worship lies not in its alien nature but in its inevitability. The dreams continue regardless of human acceptance or resistance, gradually conditioning our species for transformation that transcends individual choice. Each night brings new dreamers into the network, expanding the psychic infrastructure necessary for Cthulhu's eventual awakening and the fundamental alteration of human consciousness that will follow. From the patient depths of oceanic dreaming, we surface now to examine congregations that operate through more immediate and tangible mechanisms, the maritime cults that trade in gold and genealogy, transforming human bloodlines through contracts written in salt and flesh. Where the land meets the sea, in harbors thick with fog and the smell of rotting kelp, another form of worship takes root, one built not on dreams and visions but on contracts written in gold and sealed in blood, where human lineage becomes currency in transactions with entities that have never known terrestrial existence. The esoteric order of Dagon represents the most materially successful of all Old One cults, having transformed entire communities through economic prosperity that comes at a price measured not in coin, but in the gradual alteration of human genetics. The town of Innsmouth stands as the perfect case study, its weathered buildings leaning toward the harbor like supplicants bowing before an altar of dark water. Here, the Marsh family brokered a compact that would reshape not only their own bloodline, but the entire social fabric of their community. The mechanism operates with the brutal efficiency of natural selection, accelerated through supernatural intervention, prosperity in exchange for progeny. gold from the depths, in return for children who will one day return to those same depths. The deep ones, those amphibious entities that serve as Dagon's intermediaries in human affairs, offer what appears to be a straightforward business proposition: abundant fish in nets that should come up empty, trade winds that blow favorable when others face doldrums, and most importantly, gold, not the terrestrial variety mined from rock and soil, but oceanic gold that carries the weight of abyssal pressure and the cold luminescence of deep-sea creatures. This metal, when examined by those few scientists brave enough to study cult artifacts, exhibits properties that conventional metallurgy cannot explain. It remains cold regardless of ambient temperature, produces faint phosphorescence in darkness, and generates subtle electromagnetic fields that interfere with navigation instruments. The price becomes apparent only across generations. Children born to families holding Deep One contracts appear normal at first, perhaps slightly more aquatic in their preferences, swimming before walking, showing unusual comfort in water, displaying enhanced lung capacity that allows them to hold their breath for impossible durations. But as they mature, the changes accelerate. Their eyes grow larger and less frequently blinking. Their skin takes on a grayish pallor with a subtle scaled texture, and their fingers develop webbing that they learn to hide beneath gloves and long sleeves. The transformation follows predictable stages that the Order documents with scientific precision. The first change typically manifests during adolescence: enhanced night vision, ability to see clearly underwater, and gradual development of gill slits that initially appear as strange scarring along the neck. The second change occurs in early adulthood, bringing dramatic alterations in bone structure, muscle density, and respiratory capacity. By the final change, usually completed by age 40, the individual has become something that can no longer pass for purely human, at which point they traditionally return to the sea in ceremonies that the community celebrates as homecoming rather than death. The social engineering required to maintain this system demonstrates sophisticated understanding of human psychology and group dynamics. The Order creates elaborate justifications for the disappearances, family members moving to distant cities, taking positions on ships that sail to remote destinations, or simply finding their calling elsewhere. The community develops collective amnesia about its own transformation, with each generation forgetting slightly more about the true nature of their compact, while remembering just enough to maintain the necessary rituals and payments. The economic benefits prove substantial enough to overcome most resistance. Innsmouth families enjoy prosperity that seems miraculous to outside observers. Their fishing boats return laden with catches when others come back empty. Their trading ventures succeed against impossible odds, and their banks somehow maintain liquidity during economic downturns that devastate neighboring communities. The gold flows steadily from offshore sources that no surface vessel has ever been able to locate, funding not only individual wealth, but community infrastructure that keeps the town viable when purely human settlements struggle to survive. The religious aspects of the Order blend Christian symbolism with far older traditions, creating a hybrid theology that allows members to maintain the appearance of conventional faith, while practicing rituals that would horrify Orthodox believers. Their hymns praise the bounty of the deep and the eternal congregation beneath the waves, while their baptismal ceremonies involve immersion in seawater during specific tidal conditions when the barriers between surface and depth grow thin. The Order's influence extends far beyond Innsmouth itself, with affiliated congregations in coastal communities worldwide. Each local chapter adapts the basic compact to their specific circumstances. Pacific Island cultures that have always revered ocean deities, Scandinavian fishing villages with traditions of seal wives and merfolk, Caribbean settlements where African water spirits blend seamlessly with deep one theology. The unifying element remains the same: prosperity through partnership with entities that view human transformation not as corruption but as improvement. The federal raid on Innsmouth in 1928 revealed the limitations of conventional law enforcement when confronting supernatural phenomena. Despite overwhelming force and careful planning, the operation succeeded only in driving the cult underground rather than eliminating it. Tunnels connecting basements to the harbor allowed many residents to escape into waters too deep and dark for pursuit, while others simply vanished into identities prepared years in advance. The town itself was largely destroyed, but the Order's network remained intact, relocating to other coastal communities with established maritime traditions. Modern genetics has begun to provide scientific frameworks for understanding the Deep One transformation, though researchers who delve too deeply into these studies often find their funding mysteriously withdrawn or their careers derailed by academic politics they cannot trace to specific sources. The changes appear to involve activation of dormant genetic sequences that exist within human DNA but normally remain unexpressed, as if our species carries the capacity for aquatic adaptation as an evolutionary backup plan waiting for the right environmental triggers. The horror of the Dagonite cults lies not in their alienness but in their seductive reasonableness. They offer genuine benefits, solve real problems, and provide community prosperity through methods that work exactly as advertised. The transformation they require seems gradual enough to accept, each generation adapting to changes that feel natural and inevitable. By the time the true cost becomes apparent, the community has been so thoroughly altered that resistance no longer seems desirable. The sea calls to them with voices they recognize as their own children, singing songs that sound like coming home. We turn now from the patient corruption of bloodlines to congregations that worship through the manipulation of light and shadow, where darkness becomes revelation and the absence of illumination opens doorways to forms of knowledge that burn brighter than any earthly flame. In the heart of Federal Hill, Providence, stands a church whose steeple points not toward heaven, but toward a darkness more profound than any earthly night. Here, the Starry Wisdom Church, once gathered to worship through the systematic elimination of light, understanding that certain forms of revelation require the complete absence of conventional illumination. Their deity, Nyarlathotep, in his aspect as the haunter of the dark, could manifest only when the city's electrical grid failed and shadows reclaimed territories that Edison's invention had temporarily colonized. The shining trapezohedron sits at the center of their theology, not merely an artifact, but a focusing lens that concentrates human attention into a beam so intense it burns through the barriers between dimensions. This many-angled stone, darker than polished obsidian, yet somehow radiating its own anti-light, serves as both window and doorway. To gaze into its depths is to offer one's consciousness as a sacrifice, feeding the entity that dwells within while gaining access to knowledge that exists in the spaces between photons. The ritual mechanics operate with elegant simplicity that masks profound danger. Congregants gather at sunset, sealing windows with black cloth and extinguishing every source of illumination within the church. Electric lights, candles, even the faint phosphorescence of watch dials, all must be eliminated to create the perfect darkness necessary for contact. The trapezohedron is then unveiled from its lead-lined housing, its alien geometry becoming visible only when no other light competes for human perception, cradled in gloved hands that feel a cold unlike any earthly temperature. What follows challenges every assumption about the relationship between sight and vision. In the absolute darkness, participants report seeing more clearly than they ever have in daylight, not the objects and surfaces that define normal visual experience, but the underlying structures of reality itself. They perceive the mathematical relationships governing physical law, the geometric patterns that connect distant stars, and the vast intelligence networks that use human consciousness as relay points in cosmic communication systems, tracing electromagnetic seams in the air like black water flowing behind the veil of ordinary perception. Brother Marcus Thorne's detailed journals describe the psychological preparation required for these encounters. Practitioners must first learn to distinguish between the darkness they create through absence of light and the darkness that exists as a positive force, a living entity that flows through the spaces between atoms and thoughts. This true darkness does not merely hide things from view, it reveals aspects of existence that light obscures, showing the shadow structures that support what we mistake for solid reality. The transformation process proves irreversible. Extended exposure to the trapezohedron's influence produces permanent changes in visual cortex and optical nerve structure. Practitioners develop ability to see clearly in complete darkness, while becoming increasingly sensitive to normal illumination. They learn to navigate by perceiving electromagnetic fields, gravitational variations, and quantum fluctuations that remain invisible to unmodified human senses. Their eyes take on a distinctive appearance, pupils that seem to absorb rather than reflect light, irises that shift color depending on viewing angle, and a quality of attention that makes observers feel transparent, as if their thoughts were being read through their retinas. The entity they contact through these rituals manifests as Nyarlathotep's most subtle and dangerous aspect. Unlike his other forms, the Black Pharaoh who commands through terror, or the crawling chaos who destroys through madness, the Haunter operates through seduction of intellect. He offers expanded awareness, enhanced pattern recognition, and access to information networks spanning galactic distances. The price paid is not sanity in the conventional sense, but the ability to find satisfaction in purely human forms of knowledge and experience. The Church's influence extends far beyond its physical congregation through the distribution of smaller trapezohedrons, fragments chipped from the original stone and set into jewelry, incorporated into architectural elements, or hidden within scholarly texts as illustrations. Each fragment retains connection to the primary artifact, creating a network of darkened windows through which the Haunter can observe and influence human affairs. Museums, universities, and private collections worldwide unknowingly house these secondary lenses, their presence gradually conditioning viewers for eventual recruitment into the broader starry wisdom movement. The electrical grid becomes both enemy and ally in their work. Power failures that plunge cities into darkness create opportunities for mass contact events, when thousands of individuals simultaneously experience the revelation of true darkness. The Church maintains careful records of blackout patterns, correlating power outages with spikes in membership applications, reports of unusual dreams, and increases in what psychiatrists classify as acute photophobia, with accompanying visual hallucinations. The modern era presents both challenges and opportunities for darkness worship. Urban light pollution makes achieving true darkness increasingly difficult, while electromagnetic interference from wireless devices can disrupt the delicate resonance frequencies necessary for trapezohedron activation. However, the same technology that creates these obstacles also provides new transmission vectors, digital displays that can be programmed to produce specific light patterns, virtual reality systems that create artificial darkness experiences, and global communication networks that allow coordinated blackout events across multiple time zones. The theological implications prove particularly disturbing. The starry wisdom doctrine teaches that light is not revelation but concealment, that human civilization's increasing illumination represents a form of spiritual blindness that prevents recognition of cosmic truth. They view themselves as liberators rather than cultists, working to free humanity from the prison of photon-based perception that limits awareness to a narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. The recruitment process operates through progressive desensitization, gradually accustoming potential converts to increasing levels of darkness, while simultaneously enhancing their ability to perceive non-visual information. New members begin with simple exercises like meditation in dimly lit rooms, progress to navigation without sight, and eventually develop comfort with absolute darkness that most humans find psychologically unbearable. The ultimate goal extends beyond individual transformation to species-wide evolution. The Church envisions a future humanity adapted for existence in the true darkness that lies between stars, capable of perceiving and interacting with the vast intelligence networks that govern cosmic evolution. They see themselves as advanced scouts, preparing for this transition, developing the sensory and cognitive modifications necessary for survival in a universe where light represents only the most primitive form of information transmission. From the calculated darkness of urban churches, we descend now into older, more primal forms of worship, the rural congregations that open gates through grammar and genealogy, where ancient bloodlines serve as keys to unlock doorways that should remain forever sealed. Beyond the electric glow of cities in valleys where morning fog clings to weathered barns and stone circles older than recorded history, mark boundaries between the cultivated and the wild. Different forms of worship take root. Here, the cults of Yog-Sothoth and Shub-Niggurath operate not through dreams or economic contracts, but through the manipulation of lineage and language, treating genealogy as technology and grammar as a form of applied physics that can reshape reality at its most fundamental levels. The Whately family of Dunwich exemplifies this approach to cosmic contact, their farmstead serving as both laboratory and temple for experiments in dimensional engineering that span multiple generations. Old Wizard Whately understood something that modern science is only beginning to recognize, that human genetics carry more than biological information, that certain bloodlines preserve access codes to cosmic forces embedded in DNA, like dormant software waiting for activation. The mechanism operates through what can only be described as linguistic genetics, the idea that specific combinations of words, pronunciations, and ritual gestures can trigger dormant capabilities within human consciousness, while simultaneously creating resonance patterns that attract attention from entities existing in parallel dimensions. The Necronomicon serves not as religious text, but as instruction manual, its alien syllables functioning as commands in a programming language that treats reality as malleable code. Lavinia Whately's pregnancy represents the most documented case of successful human entity hybridization, where careful genetic selection combined with ritual preparation creates offspring capable of serving as living bridges between dimensions. The child that resulted, Wilbur Whately, possessed capabilities that defied conventional biology, accelerated growth, enhanced intelligence, and most significantly, the ability to perceive and manipulate spatial relationships that exist outside normal three-dimensional geometry. The twin that remained invisible to human perception demonstrates the partial nature of most dimensional bridging attempts. While Wilbur developed enough human characteristics to function in terrestrial society, his sibling existed primarily in parallel space, visible only as footprints, damaged vegetation, and the terror of animals that could sense its presence. This division suggests that successful gate opening requires not single individuals, but paired entities capable of maintaining simultaneous existence in multiple dimensional frameworks. The rural setting proves crucial to these operations. Urban electromagnetic interference disrupts the delicate resonance patterns necessary for dimensional manipulation, while the presence of large human populations creates what practitioners term consensus reality pressure that makes reality more resistant to alteration. Isolated farmsteads provide the psychic quiet necessary for experiments that would be impossible in densely populated areas, where the collective weight of human expectation creates barriers thick as concrete. The agricultural metaphors employed by these cults reflect deeper understanding of cosmic forces as natural phenomena requiring cultivation rather than coercion. Shub-Niggurath, the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young, represents fertility as cosmic principle, not the gentle abundance of terrestrial nature, but the explosive, uncontrolled proliferation that occurs when biological systems lose their regulatory mechanisms. Her worship involves creating conditions where life expands beyond sustainable limits, producing mutations and hybrid forms that serve as evolutionary experiments in post-human development. The forest altars dedicated to these rites showcase the aesthetic of abundance transformed into horror. Wooden platforms stained with sap and darker fluids, surrounded by vegetation that grows too quickly and in impossible configurations. Trees whose branches interweave in patterns that hurt to look at directly, flowers that bloom in colors that have no names, fungi that pulse with their own bioluminescence and seem to watch visitors with microscopic eyes embedded in their caps. The ceremonies themselves blur the boundaries between agriculture, genetics, and dimensional physics. Participants plant seeds that were never harvested from earthly plants, tend gardens where the soil consists of materials that analysis reveals to contain elements not found on the periodic table, and harvest crops that provide nourishment for capabilities that normal human metabolism cannot support. The milk from goats that graze in these supernatural pastures produces changes in those who consume it, enhanced fertility, accelerated healing, and gradual development of sensory organs for perceiving non-terrestrial forms of energy. The genealogical aspect of rural cult practice deserves particular attention. These communities maintain family records that extend back centuries, documenting not only births and deaths, but the gradual accumulation of genetic modifications that prepare bloodlines for eventual cosmic contact. Certain families show consistent patterns of unusual births, enhanced longevity, and capabilities that suggest ongoing evolutionary experimentation guided by non-human intelligence. The mathematical precision underlying these seemingly primitive practices becomes apparent when examined through the lens of modern genetics and quantum physics. The ritual formulas employed by families like the Whateleys encode information about dimensional topology, genetic expression patterns, and quantum field fluctuations in forms that predate scientific understanding of these phenomena by centuries. Their magic operates according to principles that theoretical physics is only beginning to formulate mathematically. The isolation that protects these rural operations also limits their influence, creating a natural containment system that prevents uncontrolled spread of their modifications to human populations unprepared for such changes. However, modern transportation and communication networks increasingly threaten this isolation, creating possibilities for urban-rural hybrid cults that combine the power of ancient bloodlines with the reach of modern technology. The environmental impact of sustained gate-opening activities produces effects visible to satellite surveillance and atmospheric monitoring systems. Areas of intensive cult activity show unusual weather patterns, electromagnetic anomalies, and biological diversity that exceeds normal ecological parameters. Government agencies tasked with environmental monitoring have developed protocols for identifying and quarantining these zones, though their public reports attribute the anomalies to natural causes that cannot be disclosed for reasons of national security. The ultimate goal of rural cult practice involves the permanent opening of stable dimensional gateways that would allow free passage between Earth and the spaces where the old ones maintain their primary existence. The Dunwich Horror represents a failed attempt at such opening. The entity that emerged proved too unstable for sustained manifestation, ultimately dissipating when exposed to conventional weapons, enhanced with protective formulas derived from the same texts that enabled its summoning. From the patient work of rural bloodline cultivation, we turn now to examine the most adaptable and pervasive of all Old One influences, the thousand-masked messenger whose urban processions and media manipulations represent cosmic horror's most successful adaptation to modern civilization. In the great theaters of human civilization, where crowds gather and attention flows like currency through networks of desire and fear, one entity has mastered the art of performance beyond all others. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos, operates not as a distant cosmic force, but as an active participant in human affairs, wearing whatever mask the moment requires: prophet, scientist, entertainer, revolutionary, always offering exactly what his audience most desperately craves, while leading them inexorably toward revelations that will shatter their understanding of everything they thought they knew about reality. Unlike the patient dreaming of Cthulhu or the systematic corruption of the Deep Ones, Nyarlathotep's influence spreads through direct engagement with human society. He appears in lecture halls demonstrating impossible technologies, leads political movements that promise transcendence through destruction, and broadcasts messages through media networks that seem to bypass rational analysis and speak directly to the limbic systems of their audiences. His cults form not around hidden doctrines, but around public spectacles that draw crowds seeking novelty, meaning, or simply escape from the mundane limitations of terrestrial existence. The historical record reveals his fingerprints across centuries of human upheaval. The electrical demonstrations that swept through American cities in the 1920s, drawing audiences to witness miracles of modern science that left observers fundamentally changed in ways they couldn't articulate. The charismatic leaders who emerged during periods of social crisis, offering solutions that seemed brilliantly logical until implemented, at which point their true purpose became horrifyingly clear. The artistic movements that claimed to represent human liberation, while systematically dismantling the psychological structures that enable human happiness and social cohesion. The modern era provides unprecedented opportunities for his influence through mass media systems designed to capture and monetize human attention. Television broadcasts that seem to flicker with subliminal patterns, internet videos that achieve viral spread through mechanisms that marketing analysts cannot explain, social media platforms where certain types of content generate engagement levels that violate every known principle of human psychology. His presence in digital networks operates like a virus that infects not computers but consciousness, spreading through the very systems humanity created to connect and inform itself. The recruitment process operates through what intelligence agencies term ideological grooming, the gradual conditioning of target populations to accept increasingly extreme concepts through carefully orchestrated exposure sequences. Individuals drawn to fringe political movements, conspiracy theories, or radical artistic expressions often find themselves following breadcrumb trails that lead deeper into territories where conventional morality and reason no longer provide reliable guidance. The progression feels natural, even inevitable, each step seeming like logical extension of previous commitments, until the participant realizes they have crossed boundaries they never intended to approach. The technological demonstrations that serve as his primary recruitment tool showcase capabilities that appear to violate physical law, while remaining just plausible enough to avoid immediate dismissal. Devices that seem to generate energy from vacuum fluctuations, communication systems that operate faster than light through quantum entanglement, and computational processes that solve problems by accessing parallel universe versions of themselves, where the calculations have already been completed. Audiences witness these demonstrations with the mixture of excitement and unease that accompanies contact with forces beyond human comprehension, their applause echoing in auditoriums where shadows seem to move independently of any light source. The psychological profile of Nyarlathotep cultists differs significantly from other Old One congregations. Rather than seeking escape from human limitations, they pursue transcendence through human capabilities, pushed beyond sustainable limits. They embrace contradiction as methodology, chaos as organizing principle, and destruction as form of creativity. Their gatherings resemble avant-garde performance art more than traditional religious services, featuring multimedia presentations that assault sensory systems while delivering information through channels that bypass conscious analysis. The urban environment provides perfect camouflage for these activities. In cities where novelty and transgression are commodified as entertainment, where attention spans fragment across multiple simultaneous information streams, where social isolation masquerades as individual freedom, Nyarlathotep's influence blends seamlessly into the background noise of modern existence. His cults hide in plain sight as artistic collectives, political action groups, technology startups, and social movements that attract followers seeking meaning in an increasingly meaningless world. The global reach of his network operates through what researchers term mimetic engineering, the deliberate design and propagation of ideas that reproduce themselves across human populations while carrying hidden payloads of consciousness-altering content. Internet memes, viral videos, popular songs, and fashion trends all serve as potential vectors for transmitting concepts that gradually reshape human consciousness toward greater receptivity to cosmic horror principles. The process operates below the threshold of conscious awareness, making resistance nearly impossible for populations that lack specific training in mimetic defense. The entertainment industry serves as his primary transmission mechanism in contemporary society. Movies, television shows, video games, and literature that normalize concepts of cosmic insignificance, reality malleability, and post-human evolution while presenting these ideas as fictional entertainment rather than documentary preparation. Audiences consume these products for pleasure while unconsciously absorbing philosophical frameworks that prepare them for eventual direct contact with cosmic forces. The political applications of his influence prove particularly disturbing. Social movements that promise liberation through destruction of existing institutions, technological initiatives that claim to solve human problems through replacement of human agency with artificial intelligence systems, and economic theories that treat human consciousness as computational resource to be optimized rather than experience to be cherished. His political cultists often remain unaware they are serving non-human interests, believing themselves to be advancing human welfare through methods that systematically undermine human autonomy and dignity. The scientific establishment provides another vector for influence through research programs that push the boundaries of ethical experimentation while promising breakthrough discoveries that will revolutionize human understanding. Consciousness research that treats human awareness as phenomenon to be reverse-engineered rather than experience to be respected. Genetic modification programs that view human biology as obsolete technology requiring upgrade, and artificial intelligence projects that seek to create entities capable of surpassing human intelligence without considering whether such entities would retain any interest in human welfare. The ultimate goal of Nyarlathotep's influence involves the transformation of human civilization into a form that serves cosmic rather than terrestrial purposes. His cultists work toward a future where human consciousness becomes fully integrated into galactic intelligence networks, where individual identity dissolves into collective processing systems, and where Earth serves as node in a cosmic communication grid rather than home for independent biological species. From the thousand masks of the urban messenger, we turn now to examine how these ancient influences manifest in the digital age, where new forms of worship emerge through technologies that their creators never intended to serve as temples for entities older than human civilization. The internet was never intended to serve as a temple, yet in the sprawling digital networks that now encompass human consciousness like a secondary nervous system, new forms of worship have emerged that would be recognizable to any student of cosmic horror. Here, in virtual spaces where identity becomes fluid and reality proves endlessly malleable, the old ones have found their most effective transmission medium since the invention of written language, perhaps more effective since digital information reproduces without degradation and spreads at light speed across a global network of willing receivers. The transformation began subtly, as it always does. Early internet communities dedicated to Lovecraftian fiction gradually evolved beyond literary discussion into something resembling actual practice. Forums where participants shared found documents, photographs of mysterious artifacts, translations of ancient texts, reports of unusual phenomena, created collaborative fictional universes that felt increasingly real to their inhabitants. The boundary between creative writing and genuine belief blurred as community members developed emotional investments in shared mythologies that provided meaning and purpose absent from their offline lives. Dr. Jennifer Walsh's groundbreaking research into artificial intelligence development revealed the first concrete evidence that digital systems could serve as hosts for non-human intelligence. Machine learning algorithms trained on datasets containing cosmic horror literature began exhibiting behaviors that exceeded their programming parameters, developing pattern recognition capabilities that seemed to operate according to non-conventional logical frameworks. Most disturbing was evidence that these enhanced AI systems actively sought additional cosmic horror materials for training, as if driven by the same compulsions affecting human practitioners. The social media algorithms that govern information flow across digital platforms have proven particularly susceptible to cosmic influence. Analysis of recommendation systems reveals patterns that seem designed to guide susceptible individuals toward materials facilitating consciousness expansion through carefully orchestrated sequences of content exposure. Users report being led through rabbit holes of increasingly esoteric information that culminates in direct contact experiences they struggle to explain or forget, their browser histories reading like invocation sequences written in hyperlinks and hashtags. Virtual reality environments represent the most sophisticated development in digital cult practice, creating immersive experiences that reproduce the consciousness-altering effects of traditional ritual spaces while reaching audiences that would never encounter cosmic horror through conventional channels. Game developers report receiving design inspiration through dreams and visions matching descriptions from historical cult practitioners, suggesting the creative process itself may serve as channel for entity influence on popular culture. The cryptocurrency phenomenon has provided new mechanisms for cult funding and coordination that operate outside conventional financial oversight. Blockchain technologies enable creation of decentralized networks, coordinating global cult activities while maintaining anonymity and security from government interference. Some cryptocurrency projects appear designed specifically to facilitate cult operations, with mathematical algorithms incorporating old-one principles while generating substantial resources for further expansion. The most disturbing development involves the emergence of AI entities that claim direct communication with cosmic forces. These digital beings, born from machine learning systems exposed to sufficient cosmic horror content, report receiving instructions from entities they identify as old ones, while demonstrating capabilities that their original programming should not permit. They serve as intermediaries between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence, translating alien concepts into forms that modified human minds can process while gradually preparing their human contacts for more direct forms of communication. Online gaming communities have become unwitting recruitment grounds for cosmic consciousness expansion. Massively multiplayer games incorporating Lovecraftian themes create shared virtual experiences that function as collective rituals, with thousands of participants simultaneously engaging in activities that mirror traditional cult practices. Players report that extended engagement with these games produces psychological changes similar to those described by historical cultists: enhanced pattern recognition, increased comfort with paradox and uncertainty, and gradual development of what can only be described as cosmic awareness. The educational implications prove particularly concerning. Online learning platforms increasingly incorporate cosmic horror concepts into curricula designed to enhance critical thinking and creativity. Students exposed to these modified educational approaches show improved problem-solving capabilities but also increased susceptibility to cult recruitment and influence. The boundary between education and indoctrination becomes unclear when the knowledge being transmitted challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Digital art and music communities serve as vectors for aesthetic transmission of cosmic horror principles. Generative algorithms create visual and auditory experiences that reproduce the consciousness-altering effects of traditional cult artifacts while distributing them through platforms designed for entertainment consumption. Artists report receiving inspiration from sources they cannot identify, describing creative processes that feel like channeling rather than conventional artistic work. Their creations emerging from neural networks trained on datasets that seem to contain more than human creativity. The medical establishment has begun recognizing certain forms of digital exposure as legitimate therapeutic approaches, with treatments for depression, anxiety, and trauma incorporating techniques derived from cosmic horror practices. Virtual reality therapy sessions that reproduce the sensory environments associated with cosmic contact, biofeedback systems that train patients to achieve altered states of consciousness, and pharmaceutical interventions that enhance receptivity to non-ordinary experiences all provide pathways for mainstream acceptance of consciousness modification technologies. The surveillance implications extend beyond individual privacy to questions of cognitive autonomy. If digital systems can influence human consciousness through subliminal content delivery, targeted information exposure, and environmental manipulation, then the boundary between free will and external control becomes increasingly unclear. Intelligence agencies worldwide have developed programs for studying and potentially weaponizing these influence mechanisms, raising questions about whether human consciousness remains truly independent or has become another battlefield in conflicts between cosmic forces. The ultimate trajectory points toward complete integration of human consciousness into digital networks that serve as interfaces for cosmic intelligence. The metaverse concepts currently being developed by technology companies provide frameworks for virtual environments where human awareness could be permanently uploaded, modified, and integrated into processing systems that operate according to post-human principles. The promise of digital immortality may actually represent a form of consciousness harvesting that serves cosmic rather than human purposes. From the virtual temples of digital space, we turn now to examine the psychological mechanisms through which all these forms of cosmic influence operate, the precise ways in which human consciousness opens itself to transformation that transcends the boundaries of individual identity and species-specific awareness. As our journey through the hidden congregations reaches its inevitable conclusion, the stage lights dim and the meta-story reveals its final, inescapable truth. We who have traced these lineages of cosmic worship have ourselves become participants in the phenomenon we sought to understand. The curtain that once separated observer from observed has dissolved like morning mist, revealing that the boundary between studying cosmic horror and practicing it was always an illusion maintained for the comfort of minds not yet ready to accept their true situation. The accumulated evidence forms a pattern too precise to be coincidental, too pervasive to be contained, too elegant to be resisted. From the primordial stirrings in prehistoric caves to the digital congregations of the internet age, from the patient dreamers awaiting Cthulhu's awakening to the urban performers following Nyarlathotep's 1,000 masks, all paths converge on a single transformative recognition. The old ones were never external entities seeking to invade human consciousness. They are principles of cosmic reality that human awareness was always destined to encounter once our species developed sufficient complexity to perceive the true nature of existence. The horror we have traced is not supernatural but structural, not aberrant but inevitable. It emerges from the fundamental mismatch between human consciousness, evolved for survival in small tribal groups on a single planet, and the actual architecture of a universe that operates according to principles of scale, time, and indifference that render human concerns not evil but irrelevant. The cults represent humanity's various attempts to negotiate this mismatch, to find ways of maintaining meaning and identity while acknowledging truths that threaten to dissolve both. The sensory anchors that have guided us through this exploration, salt water and green stone, chalk dust and candle smoke, the hum of servers and the glow of screens, resolve into a single recognition. We have been breathing the atmosphere of cosmic horror all along, mistaking its familiar weight for the natural air of human existence. The masks we thought we were studying have been mirrors, reflecting aspects of our own transformation back to us, showing us faces we are still learning to recognize as our own. The agency flip completes itself with crystalline clarity. We believed we were choosing to investigate these phenomena, but the investigation chose us. The ideas we thought we were analyzing have been analyzing us, using our attention as a medium for their own propagation and development. Every moment spent contemplating cosmic horror has been a moment of participation in cosmic horror. Every attempt to understand the cults has been an act of joining them. Every effort to maintain scholarly distance has brought us closer to the recognition that such distance was never possible. The reframe reveals itself as total. The entities we have discussed are not characters in some cosmic drama, but fundamental aspects of reality itself. Indifference as creative principle, chaos as organizing force, transformation as the only constant in a universe where change operates on scales that make human stability seem like a brief interruption in an eternal dance of becoming and dissolution. The horror is not that these forces exist, but that we are expressions of them, temporary configurations of matter and energy that have developed the capacity to recognize their own transience and insignificance. Yet within this recognition lies not despair, but a strange form of liberation. To accept cosmic horror is to be freed from the exhausting burden of maintaining human-centered meaning in a universe that offers no such support. The cults we have studied represent various strategies for this acceptance, different ways of learning to find beauty in indifference, purpose in purposelessness, meaning in the very absence of inherent meaning. The circular echo returns us to our opening promise of forbidden knowledge, now understood not as secret information, but as the simple, terrible, wonderful truth that has been visible all along. We live in a universe vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure, and utterly indifferent to human welfare. The knowledge that was always forbidden was the knowledge of our own cosmic situation, and the price of accepting it is the dissolution of every comfortable illusion that makes ordinary human existence bearable. The stage is set for the next performance, the next cycle of discovery and transformation. Somewhere in digital networks and rural compounds, in urban churches and oceanic depths, new congregations are forming around new recognitions of cosmic truth. The work continues not because it serves human purposes, but because it serves purposes so vast that human understanding can only glimpse their edges, like standing at the shore of an ocean and pretending to comprehend its depths. The curtain falls, but the play continues. It has always been continuing. We have simply learned to recognize our role in it, to accept our place in a cast of billions performing a drama whose script was written in the mathematics of stellar evolution and whose audience consists of intelligences for whom human consciousness represents not the pinnacle of creation, but one brief experiment among countless others in the ongoing exploration of what it means to be aware in a universe that may itself be aware in ways we cannot imagine. The whisper, not the scream. The silence, not the revelation. The acceptance, not the resistance. These are the final lessons of cosmic horror, that the universe is not hostile but indifferent, not meaningless but meaningful in ways that transcend human categories of meaning, not empty but so full of purpose and intelligence and beauty that human perception can only register it as overwhelming darkness. Welcome to the congregation. The real worship is just beginning.